Hello, hello. I warmly welcome you. I'm David, and today we're going to look at the situation in the head of this man, this person you're currently thinking about, which you yourself are causing. So we'll see what's going on in this person's head because of you at this moment. So I warmly invite you to this spread. We'll see what's happening there and how it currently looks. This may also be some kind of signal as to what will happen in the coming days from this person's side. So I think we have a nice spread ahead of us. Settle in comfortably, and I'll try, as always, to give you as clear and concrete a reading as possible. I also thank you for all the comments. I'm very pleased because there are a lot of comments and really a lot of very nice ones, so thank you for each one. I also thank you for the coffees that are being bought for me all the time somewhere there. I'm very pleased. Of course I drink all the coffees, so they're especially tasty when I feel that this bought coffee is a form of support. So thank you very much for that too, and of course for all the activity that appears here on the channel. I feel that after this time we've spent here together, it's already like some kind of community, not just some random channel. Probably some of you already know me as David, and not as Spiritual Compass, so I'm all the more pleased. And of course I thank you very much for all of this. So let's see what's going on in the head of the man or the person you're thinking about because of you today, or currently, meaning perhaps today, tomorrow, or yesterday. We're starting with the Six of Pentacles, which is in the first position, so a card that I would say is a card of exchange. And here it shows that in his head there appears some topic of balance exchange. He's thinking about how much he gives, how much he receives, and whether this arrangement is fair at all. This is not a card of great elation, this is a card of concrete matters, meaning he's analyzing whether the investment pays off in this relationship, whether it makes sense, whether energy is circulating on both sides. If he feels something, he wants to see real confirmation. There's no romantic flight here, but rather calculation and observation. In emotions, there also appears a need to be the one who has control over the situation, meaning he might be wondering whether he's giving too much or whether he's being taken advantage of. Sometimes it works the other way too, meaning he knows that you are giving more. Then a slight discomfort appears in his head because the Six of Pentacles shows imbalance, and a man who feels that someone is giving him more than he himself gives starts to feel slight pressure. For some of you, this will be a man who's thinking, am I able to match her? This can also block him, but not in the sense of romantic suffering, but in the sense of ego, because he wants to feel strong, capable, generous. This is a man. Especially for relationships with a man, this is all the more familiar or normal. You see, ego is always very important, and surely, if you've already had several relationships, several stories with a man, then you probably know that a wounded male ego is very uncomfortable, so to speak. And actually, it's not that easy to wound. I have the impression that nowadays, it's increasingly easy to wound someone's ego, but that's probably on both sides. Although I'm not entirely sure about both sides either, but that's what I hear, especially from people who contact me, that somewhere the topic of ego being violated often comes up and it becomes a problem. Well, this is an interesting anecdote, a digression. In any case, this card clearly says that in his head right now, there's no chaos of feelings. There's some analysis, there's balance. So interesting, maybe there was some bill between you, maybe a bill that wasn't split, and now he's thinking to himself, damn, we didn't split the bill, meaning I paid for everything. Okay, fine. So now she might give me something, maybe suggest going out somewhere, maybe something. So here it's not really about material things typically, meaning let's say he paid for a bouquet of flowers or whatever, and now expects you to give him back the equivalent value. Rather, he expects at least, another outing or perhaps something more somewhere, depending on what stage your relationship is at. In any case, this is where I'm heading with this, that this is an expectation of something further, something more perhaps, in this form, in such a form that it's giving back for what he gave, what he put in. That's how I describe it. So we have this first image, this first signal. So we see that today and currently the aura around his thoughts regarding you is quite like this, that I gave something, so he also expects something. Five of Swords in the second position, and we have a card that shows that besides this, a conflict appears in his head. And this isn't a romantic conflict in the style of, oh, I'm suffering from love, but again, some kind of ego conflict. He may feel that in this relationship something was or is a struggle for being right, for dominance, for who has the last word. This is particularly interesting in the context of this exchange that appeared here. Well, because of course it may concern it. he may be returning to a situation in which he felt offended or somehow unevenly, so to speak, rewarded for his input. Maybe there's some situation that he holds against you, for example, that he often returns to in conversations and says, well, listen, but once there was something I invited you to the cinema, bought popcorn, and you said you didn't even like the film, let alone any return on that for me. Or I don't know, it was supposed to be cinema dinner, and it turned out that after the cinema you ran away, and I was counting on something more from that evening. So this might be such tension that appears somewhere in connection with some situation that was earlier, and today it is currently somewhere on the tip of the tongue, or perhaps more on the mind of this person, this man. He may particularly have much greater inclinations than normal to potentially recover this in some way, meaning perhaps suggesting something specific that should come from you, or such inciting towards some situation between you, maybe closeness, maybe something he expects most from you. This is also a card that shows that something may be unfinished between you, meaning this is also such, let's say, an interrupted date, that maybe something got interrupted, that maybe there was supposed to be one meeting you met, there was supposed to be a second one where something would be more, and here suddenly after the first meeting you said, okay, this is not my type after all, this is not it, so sayonara. And he said, oh no, that's not how you do things, and a trick came out. Anyway, he has something like this. Currently, what's happening in his head? Because of you, it's such a damn. Thought that something was supposed to be more, but it wasn't in the end. That's the impression I get. That's how the cards are guiding me so far. So let's see what's next. And in the meantime, I invite you to arcanemoonshop.com. If you feel the need for a private reading, if you have any questions for the cards, I invite you to a private reading at arcanemoonshop.com. I also recently introduced several interesting tools to my website. I think, these are such calculators. For example, a calculator of your year, or Chinese zodiac sign, or numerology calculator. So it's also nice if someone hasn't visited this site or was already on this site once, visit again, because I've just introduced such free cool tools there. So maybe there's something you would like to use, so I invite you. For everyone there's something good. I think there will be even more different things there. There's also a blog, so if someone likes reading about, spheres, astrological things, esoteric things, they'll also find something for themselves. So I invite you not only for private readings, but also for these smaller, completely free things. arcanemoonshop.com, as you know, so I invite you. Meanwhile, Temperance in the third position. Temperance is interesting because it kind of calms this down for us, so this isn't some big deal for him, meaning, okay, there wasn't a second meeting, there wasn't a continuation, but still he'll try to maintain, basically it's not a big deal. Maybe that's saying too much, that it's not something big, but he's certainly trying, to balance, maintain equilibrium, and think to himself, okay, fine, she didn't invite me, fine, well, yeah, she wasn't worth it anyway, I didn't like her anyway, she wasn't my type anyway. Something like that might appear. Temperance is admittedly more of a harmonious card, a good one, let's say even mature in a certain sense, but of course it can also apply more specifically to one approach rather than another. However, this also shows that despite these tensions, despite this situation that happened somewhere there, he's still trying to balance it. So it's not like, okay, I'm offended, let's totally cut off contact, goodbye, but it's more like, well, okay, she didn't want to meet a second time, didn't want something there, didn't want to go a step further, so in that case I'll balance something here, and I don't know, he'll write to her that somehow he'll smooth over this matter, that he also needs to sort this out in his head. It's definitely not that simple, especially for that ego I mentioned at the beginning, that something got hurt there, and now what to do with it. So it's not like he's cutting it off, that he's completely brushing it aside and saying, okay, no means no, bye, but rather more calmly. Like, okay, fine, this is unpleasant, but still something needs to be done about it, maybe somehow fix it. However, Americanization is not a card of sudden moves, so for example, if he actually felt bad about something that happened, well, he won't react right away, and won't say immediately that, oh Jesus, I felt bad, let's do something, or I expect something from you in some way. Rather, he'll try to patch it up calmly, slowly somehow. So you can expect from him such moves that, well, won't be directly, let's say, pressure from his side for something specific, but still slowly they may lead to a specific thing. I expect something from you, whether it's maybe, I don't know, greater closeness, or maybe some issue I don't know, maybe more financial, maybe some It's hard for them to say, but anyway, you know what I mean, I think, right? So he won't strive for it like right now, but rather step by step in small steps. For example, if it was actually a meeting, well, of course, naturally he'll invite maybe to some, for example, I don't know, he wanted to meet with you at home, at his place, but you didn't want to, well, now he'll invite you to the cinema, dinner, going out to the park, and then again he'll invite you to his place. And in this way, he'll familiarize you a bit and move that boundary, right? So this is something like, I have the impression, especially with the temperance, which is quite calm, harmonious, so his current thought about you is quite like, something didn't work out, so there's some tension, I don't like this, it was unequal, it wasn't fair, but okay, well fine, if it has to be this way, then in that case I'll do it a bit more slowly and I'll sort of suggest next things that will make us eventually get to the same moment, just in a different way. That's the impression I have, irresistibly. Alright, we're moving on. We have the fourth position, which is the Tower card, and here in the context of the second question, meaning what he's afraid of in relation to you or what he's holding back from. The Tower is an interesting card because it's a very strong card, a card primarily of shattering some illusions, or shattering perhaps some things that are built that are collapsing right at this moment, and quite so quickly, strongly, because, you know, the Tower, it's obvious that if something collapses down there, everything goes at once, obviously. Anyway, what he's afraid of is, I have the impression, such a collapse of the illusion about him, meaning you have some vision of him, you have a vision of him as someone specific, you see him as a guy who's, I don't know, charismatic, cool, good, something like that. Anyway, he's afraid that this vision will collapse. I have the impression, because we have the question what he's afraid of. The Tower card shows the collapse of illusions primarily because the Tower doesn't say that everything is falling, that it's the end and end of the world, and that's it. The Tower talks about the collapse of illusions, so he's afraid of the collapse of the illusion about himself in your head. So apparently, a certain issue that came up somewhere here in all this energy is for him something a bit, not so much something made up, but, you know, that you perceive it a bit differently, perhaps in his favor, since he's afraid of this. You know, for example, you perceive him as, I don't know, having good foundations for building a long-term relationship, that he wants to build a long-term relationship. You have this illusion in your head, but in reality he doesn't want that. So he's afraid of this illusion collapsing because perhaps this illusion would mean that the relationship between you, as it currently is, won't exist. So today he has this perception that this just can't fall apart. I'm also curious, since temperance appears here, he actually wants to soften this. Perhaps something appeared earlier that made you start to suspect something, but temperance is holding it back. So you can see he wants to maintain this relationship and for it not to collapse. I mean, you know, I'm not saying this illusion is something revolutionary either, in the sense that it's not like he'll suddenly jump out and tell you he has a wife and you're the mistress or something like that. That's more of an extreme situation I got, and I'm only talking about such signals, not such specific ones, let's say. I'm not saying exactly what will happen, because obviously the reading is collective, so everyone has to fit this energy to themselves a bit. In any case, there really is such an illusion that exists, which works in his favor in your head, and it works in such a way that his image is better, not worse. And the Ace of Cups in the fifth position, so a card that shows very pure feelings. And this is interesting, because it appears in the context of the Tower, of course. Well, it looks strange, I'll be honest. Until now I was talking about all this like he's kind of a bad man, a bad person. However, the Ace of Cups shows some emotions, shows some beginning, often an emotional beginning, well, because cups are emotions, ace is a beginning, so anyway, an emotional beginning that's emerging here. And now the question is, what could this be about? Let's look at the third card. Okay, the Wheel of Fortune with that. Well, okay, so he's afraid of some collapse of an illusion, but this collapse of an illusion is connected with a wheel that turns and which has at the top a rebirth of emotions, and at the bottom probably this end of emotions, or such a Great Depression, let's say. In any case, what he's afraid of could be such a situation in which, well, precisely this wheel will turn, because obviously the wheel turns. The wheel is a symbol of cycles, or a cycle. Well, and sometimes you're at the top, sometimes you're at the bottom. That's what the wheel says. However, the Ace of Cups is the beginning of emotions, and now I'm wondering, because the question is whether it isn't the case that some emotions have appeared in you, and we're currently at the top of the wheel, meaning your emotions are very strong. You have some illusion about him. Damn, I don't want this to sound so bad, because I generally like spreads to be very nice and very positive, and here it would seem that whether about some manipulator or some villain, but well, something tells me that this is about us being at the top of the wheel, meaning the Ace of Cups appears, which is this beginning. Such a strong emotion, which is most often the beginning of a relationship. Because obviously a relationship to survive needs emotions. Well, but still at the beginning they're the strongest, we fall in love, or someone starts to appeal to us and so on, then it's the most powerful. The further into the forest, the more potentially emotions of course continue, but they're smaller. Well, because it already becomes more everyday and so on. So the question is whether it isn't the case. That these emotions that are current, whether in you as a person who feels this, I mean sees him as an illusion through some kind of glass, through such rose-colored glasses that he puts on your eyes, and this wheel might turn around in a moment, unfortunately, which means that these emotions might end. Or looking from the other side, meaning looking at him, he's creating some illusion that he has some feelings there, that it's only being created, emerging, and this wheel might turn around soon and those emotions might not be there, at least not as much as now, that's how I'd put it. So, also returning to the main question of our spread, because this is what's most important, what's happening in his head currently about you. It's primarily some kind of memory that was between you, which was unfair to him, perhaps unfinished, like I mentioned about that date that didn't happen somewhere, or a meeting that was supposed to take place but didn't happen. He's thinking about it, but he's trying to somehow harmonize it there, explain it to himself, and in a way, loosen it up, maybe even to you. Maybe he even refused the meeting and is trying to, be this sweetening, and so in one night, explain to you, no, listen, I had something more important there, a very important meeting once a year, and our meeting day happened to fall on that day. Well, damn, what bad luck. Exactly that day, some excuse, right? Appeared, for example. Well, and indeed, perhaps in connection with this, the tower appears, which scares a bit about this fall of feelings, but they are still feelings nonetheless. However, it shows that, indeed, this will turn around soon, and these feelings might end, whether on your side or his, depending on what the situation is. That's also how it will look. Well, of course, it's known that later it comes back up again, right? But on the other hand, the question is whether we want to be in such a cycle, because if someone is giving us hot and cold signals, yes, no, and so on, it's not really a very good relationship. I mean, unless it's the beginning, because obviously at the beginning it's more about getting to know each other, but if it's a relationship that has already existed for some time, and it's still hot and cold, then unfortunately that's not it, no. And that's what this spread tells me. So interesting. Well, yes, quite unusual today, I have the impression, but also nice, because if it were the same all the time, I think it would be boring. Besides, I think it can't be the same because I often read for current energy, and this energy changes even daily. It can be different, so that's quite understandable. In any case, thank you very much for listening. I invite you to arcanemoonshop.com, and of course, thank you for listening. Thank you for all this time you've spent here with me, whether you're male or female. I wish you a wonderful day, and of course, all the best. See you. Hey,